The bell above the butcher's door didn't jingle. The sheriff pushed it slow, boots dragging against the warped floor. The smell hit first. Not rot, not yet. Just raw iron and old heat. He didn't call out. He never had to with this one. The light behind the counter was still on. The butcher was slumped forward over the block, arms loose, fingers curled like they'd tried to catch something that never came. Blood soaked the wood, pooled under his cheek, and ran thin where it slid down the legs of the table. The blade was upright, stuck clean in the center of the board. A torn slip of paper clung to it, wet and red, one corner still fluttering. The sheriff stepped forward. No signs of a fight, no broken shelves, no prints but his own. He leaned over the note. One word. Cass. A voice behind him. That a confession? He didn't turn. Number? That's a map. To what? He pulled the knife free, paper stuck to the hilt, then wiped the blade on his coat. Whatever the hell he died hiding. He walked out without shutting the door. The horse was saddled by first light. The road out of town curled behind the trees, the fog thick enough to swallow sound. He didn't ride fast. He didn't need to. The path to her wasn't hard to find. The tavern sat hunched at the edge of a dead orchard, its roof patched with old signs and hammered tin. Smoke pushed from the chimney, tired and steady. He tied the reins and left the horse breathing cold behind him. He didn't knock. Inside, morning hadn't touched anything. The bar was half lit, oil lamps hissing behind thick glass. Tables empty, but not clean. The barkeep looked up and looked away. She stood at the end of the counter, sleeves rolled, drying a chipped glass with a cloth that had seen too many nights. Her eyes were wrong for her age. He knew her before she looked up. Cass. She didn't flinch. You've been using that name for a long time, he asked. Long enough to forget it came from somewhere. Her voice didn't match her face. Too calm. But it did. Came from a dying man. She didn't stop wiping. There are a lot of dying men around here. This one left a note. Her hands paused. Just enough. He stepped closer, pulled the note from his coat, set it on the counter. The barkeep leaned in but stepped back fast. Trouble? Not yet, the sheriff said. Cass looked at the paper. Blood had dried around the edges, curled the fibers. The name had bled, but not away. You want me to explain that? I want to know why a man cut his throat with your name in his teeth. She stared at him for a long while. You think I killed him? No. Then why are you here? Because he died for you. The barkeep took a step back. You sure you want to have this talk in public? Cass looked around. Empty room, empty chairs, empty everything. Ain't like anyone's listening. Not yet, the sheriff said. But they will be. He reached for the note, folded it once, slid it back in his coat. I need you to come with me. I'm not going anywhere with someone who smells like old blood. You'll come. What makes you so sure? He stepped back. Because whoever did that to him might come looking for you next. She stared, then turned her back. He waited. She walked down the narrow hall behind the bar. Didn't say a word. Didn't ask if he'd follow. But he did. The room upstairs was small. A bed, a chair, a window. Nothing personal. No pictures. No colors. She stood by the wall while he closed the door. You think he raised me? She asked. No. Then what? I think he hid you. From who? That's what I'm trying to find out. She crossed her arms. Maybe I don't want it found. That's not yours to decide anymore. A floorboard creaked outside the door. The sheriff drew his gun. Quiet. Fast. He pressed a finger to his lips. Cass moved to the window, eased it open. Another step in the hall. The sheriff yanked the door. Nobody. A boot print in the dust fading down the stairs. He looked at her. You got enemies. Don't we all? I mean ones with keys to your room. She shook her head. I don't even lock it. You will now. He went back to the window, looked down. A wagon stood behind the tavern, fresh mud on the wheels. Nothing in the back, but on the axle, a second note. Pinned. He climbed out, landed soft, ripped the paper free. 4 words. If she remembers, she dies. He turned it in his hands. Same paper, same ink. She leaned out above. Is that a threat? No, he said. That's a promise. He looked back up at her. Is there something to remember? She didn't blink. Maybe. What does that mean? It means memories like bone. It breaks differently for everyone." He stared at her for a long moment, then pocketed the note. "Pack a bag," he said. "You're coming with me." She didn't ask where. She just stepped back and closed the window. Cass stood near the tap, cloth in one hand, glass in the other. Her rhythm didn't change when the sheriff stepped through the tavern door. She didn't look up. Didn't have to. The room shifted around him. Shoulders stiffened, conversations thinned. A silence grew wide around his boots. He walked to the bar and sat. She kept wiping. "You've been using that name for a long time, long enough to forget it came from somewhere." "But it did," he said. "It came from a dying man." Her hand paused only a second, then moved again. The barkeep glanced up from the ledger and froze. A bottle tilted too far. Liquid sloshed over the rim. He didn't wipe it. Cass turned her head just enough to see the sheriff's face. "Are you here to accuse me?" "No," he said. "I'm here because his blood spelled your name." One of the regulars at the end of the bar cleared his throat. Another stood slow, uncertain. The air thinned again. The sheriff didn't look at them. Cass set the glass down. "So what? Men bleed. Names come out. Doesn't mean they belong to me." The barkeep's voice cracked. "Everything all right, Cass?" "No," she said. "But it never is." The sheriff nodded toward the back. "We can talk alone." "I talk fine right here." "You're making them nervous." "I make everyone nervous." "I need you to come with me." Her jaw locked. "I'm not going anywhere with someone who smells like old blood. It's his." "That's supposed to matter?" He leaned forward, elbows on the counter. "It does if you want to live through this." The barkeep moved from behind the counter. "I think you ought to leave, Sheriff. This isn't your business." Cass raised a hand. "It's fine, Daryl." "No, it ain't." "I said it's fine." Daryl hesitated, then stepped back, knuckling white around the towel he hadn't used. The sheriff waited. Cass grabbed another glass. "You think I've been hiding?" she asked. "I think someone was hiding you." "Same thing." "No, it ain't." She faced him. "You think I killed him?" "No." "Then why come?" "Because dying men don't lie with their last breath. Not if they're afraid." And he was afraid. Throat slit. No signs of struggle. He did it himself. Cass blinked once. Then he was guilty. Or loyal. To what? The sheriff stood. "That's what I'm trying to find out." Cass tossed the cloth down. "You think I'm some secret?" "I think you're the end of one." She stepped around the counter, slow. People shifted out of her way. She moved past him, toward the stairs. "Are you still following?" He didn't answer, just walked. Upstairs again. Same narrow hallway. Same door. She didn't unlock it this time. Inside, she sat on the bed. The sheriff stayed near the door. "You follow every name you find on dying men?" "No." "Then why mine?" "Because they're still watching." She laughed once. "Who?" He held up the second note, the one from under the wagon, tossed it to her. She unfolded it, read it twice. Her voice dropped. "You sure it's about me?" "You remember something, don't you?" She looked down. "Not clear, but enough to be dangerous." She looked up. "To who?" "That's what I want you to tell me." "I can't." "Won't." "Both." The sheriff took a step closer. "What's the oldest thing you remember?" "A fire." "What kind?" "The kind that talks." He stopped. "What did it say?" "I don't know. I just remember the sound. It wasn't words. It was—" She shrugged. "Pulling. Pulling. Like it. Wanted something from me." He sat on the chair near the window. "The butcher. He wrote your name. Do you remember him?" She shook her head. "Not as a butcher, just as a shadow." "A shadow?" "He used to sit in the dark. I remember that. He never spoke unless it was storming." "You lived with him?" "Maybe. There were too many walls." "You scared?" "I don't know what I am." The room went quiet. Then, "I shouldn't have come here," she said. "Where should you have gone?" "I was told this town was dead enough to forget about." He leaned forward. "Who told you that?" She didn't answer. He stood, walked to the dresser, a comb, a cracked mirror, no photos, no letters. "You packed light," he said. "I planned to leave fast." "But you stayed." "I got tired of running." "You're going to have to start again." "No," she said. "I'm done hiding." "They're not done finding." Cass stood, slow. "Then let them come." "You don't even know what they want." Doesn't matter, she said. They'll come either way. He stepped toward the door. We ride tonight. Where? Somewhere they won't follow. She crossed her arms. That place doesn't exist. It does if we bury the right things. She stared at him, then down at the note again. I want to see where he died. You sure? I want to know if I made a man slit his own throat. He opened the door. Then ride close. We don't stop on the road. Fine. Pack quiet. I don't make noise, she said. He didn't argue. She moved toward the chest at the foot of the bed. He stepped into the hall. The door closed behind him. Downstairs, the room was still. Darrell looked up, eyes full of things he didn't say. The sheriff didn't explain. He walked out into the dark. The door slammed behind them, sharp like a shot. Cass didn't flinch. She moved to the window, cracked it open, then turned fast when the sheriff dropped the note on the bed. It stuck to the blanket for a second, still stained from blood that had dried too slow. She crossed her arms. You think I killed him? No, he said. But I think he died for you. That's supposed to flatter me? He stepped closer. He cut his own throat, sat down neat, laid the blade like it was church silver. No note to God, just you. Then maybe I'm God. He didn't smile. Do you remember him? Not like you want me to. I want the truth. Then dig him up and ask him. They stared. The room was too small for both of them, and the heat between them. A cracked mirror reflected their anger like a third voice in the room. He raised you, didn't he? The sheriff said. Cass stepped sideways near the dresser. He kept me in a cellar with no name. That's not raising. That's hiding. From who? I said. I didn't know. But you believe it. Doesn't matter if I believe it. I lived it. He picked up the note again, flapped it once. Why now? Why write your name now? She turned to the window. Maybe he thought I'd come back. You did. By accident. Not likely. I was running, she said. I didn't pick this town for its butcher. He stepped to the side of the bed. What else do you remember? Don't. Tell me. I said don't. The lamp on the nightstand flickered. Her breath was uneven now, voice lower. There were voices in the dark. A woman's, mostly. She sang. The same song over and over. Something about a gate. And her fingers were cold. Not his voice. No. But he was there. I think so. Have you ever seen him hurt someone? Her shoulders tensed. No. But you felt it. Every wall in that house felt like teeth. He sat down on the edge of the bed. The mattress squeaked once. What song? I said stop. Just the words. You want to dig in my head. I want to know who wants you dead. She spun. Everyone. The room went still. Then, a soft scuff outside the door. Both froze. Boot on wood. Not weighty enough to creak, but loud enough to notice. The sheriff stood slow. Hand reached back. Coat pulled. She mouthed it. Gun. He nodded once. Another step. Then stillness. He crossed to the door in silence, sidestepped, pressed his back to the wall. Cass held her breath. The handle turned. Only a hair. He yanked the door. Nothing there. Hallway empty. But down at the end, a shadow pulled back from view. He gave chase. Cass followed fast, boots light, breath tight in her throat. The hallway led to the narrow stairwell. He took them two at a time, hit the main floor with his gun raised. Empty chairs, silent bar, fire low in the hearth. Darrell wasn't at the counter anymore. A door clicked shut in the back. He moved fast, slammed it open. Storage room, barrels, crates, a broken rocking chair, and ratty drapes nailed to the walls. But no one. Cass stepped in behind him. You see them? No. You heard them. He nodded. She moved to the window. It was cracked open. Wind pulled at the curtain. Out the back, she said. They were listening. To what? To that damn song, he muttered. Cass leaned close to the edge of the sill. There's no prints, because they weren't here to walk. You believe in ghosts now? He didn't answer. She stared at him. You look rattled, because someone came all the way upstairs just to listen. That ain't curiosity, that's the intent. She closed the window slowly. You think it's tied to the note? He nodded. Same rhythm. They walked back through the tavern. Darrell still wasn't at the bar. The sheriff glanced at the backroom door. Again. He's here. He should be. Cass went behind the counter, opened the register, then reached beneath it. Her hand hovered near something hidden. a rusted crowbar. "I'm not letting someone pin a death on me," she said. "They're not trying to pin it. They're trying to erase you before the trail goes cold. So what now?" "We rode tonight. I'll keep watch until sundown." "You think they'll come back?" "They never left." She stared long at him. "I'm not a puzzle. I'm just what's left." He holstered his gun. "Then let's start with the pieces." Back in the room upstairs, he pulled the curtains tighter, blocked the window latch with a chair. She tossed her boots to the corner, folded a threadbare blanket onto the floor. "I sleep on wood," she said. "You don't trust me?" "No." "Good." She lay down, eyes on the ceiling. "Why'd you take the note?" "I was supposed to burn it." "Why didn't you?" He looked at her. "Because my name used to be in a note like that." She didn't ask more. The room stayed silent, just the tick of a clock, too slow to matter. Downstairs, the fire popped once, like breath caught in a throat. They didn't move, just listened. The sheriff was first to the stairs. Cass followed, bare feet soft on the boards. She kept her hand on the rail, eyes scanning the hallway like it might twist behind her. When they hit the landing, the tavern looked wrong. Too quiet, chairs still where they were, lamps out. The air was flat like it hadn't moved all night. He stepped to the front door and turned the knob. Nothing. He pushed harder. The door didn't budge. He dropped to one knee and checked the base. Then stood again, knocked twice on the wood, hard. It rang solid. Cass moved beside him, crouched down, pulled her fingers along the crack near the hinge. Her nail caught. She yanked her hand back, wiped it on her leg. "Something's in the seam," she said. He reached down, pulled a knife from his boot, wedged it in. It caught on metal. He looked at her. "It's nailed shut." Cass straightened. "From the outside?" He nodded. "Heavy gauge." She backed up and kicked the door hard. The thud echoed through the tavern. "Who'd want us trapped?" she asked. He didn't answer right away, just stared at the wood. She asked again, sharper. "Who?" He stood. "The same kind that leaves messages in blood." Her jaw clenched. "You think they're still out there? Or they're inside?" He turned and scanned the room. "I walked behind the bar. No Daryl, nothing but a burnt-out lantern and 2 unopened bottles." He pointed toward the side hallway. "Windows in the back?" She nodded. They moved fast, turned the corner past the kitchen into the old storage room. He tested the latch. It creaked open. Cass pushed past him and climbed through first. He followed, boots hitting the dirt behind her. The sky was barely pink, clouds bruised low. Nothing moved on the road, but his horse was still tied, reins slack, breathing slow. Cass headed straight for the wagon parked under the tree. He caught up. "Careful!" She crouched. "You see that?" He knelt beside her. Under the frame, a paper was tacked to the wooden axle, flapping just enough to catch the eye. He tugged it loose. Same handwriting, same red ink. He read it aloud. "If she remembers, she dies." Cass stared down at the dirt. Her voice dropped. "That for me?" He didn't look up. "Who else would it be?" "Could be a warning. Or a threat. Or both." He folded the note and tucked it in his coat. She stood, brushing dirt off her knees. "You think it's the same hand as the butcher's?" "Feels like it." "Then why leave it where a horse could piss on it?" "Because it wasn't for everyone." Her eyes locked on his. "Then why'd we find it?" He turned toward the tree line, scanned for movement. "Because someone wanted us to." She folded her arms. "You believe in ghosts?" "I believe in people who act like 'em." He walked to the wagon, traced his fingers along the back rail. Dust shifted under his thumb. "Somebody leaned here," he said. "Watch the door." Cass didn't move. "You remember something?" he asked. She blinked. "Maybe." He waited. She shifted. "There was a man once, not the butcher, younger, tall, burn on his cheek." "Where?" "I don't know." "You see his face?" "In pieces." He stepped closer. "How are all your memories?" "Like a broken bottle," she said. "I know what it held, but not where it spilled." "Did you know the butcher before the cellar?" "I think so." "What about the song?" Her voice flattened. "Don't. I need the lyrics. You need to stop treating me like a locked drawer. I'm trying to open it." "Well, maybe I nailed it shut." They stood quiet. Then he asked again, gentler this time. "Is there something to remember?" Cass's voice cracked. "Maybe. But memory's like bone. It breaks differently for everyone." He nodded slowly. The wind picked up. The wagon creaked. He looked to the road. "We need to leave." "Where?" "Back to the shop." "Where did he die?" where he chose to die. She didn't argue. They climbed into the wagon. It groaned under their weight. He took the reins. She sat beside him, arms crossed tight over her chest like she was holding herself together. They rode through the edge of town in silence. Windows stayed dark. The curtains didn't twitch. No one waved. Cass whispered, "Why me?" He didn't pretend to know. The shop came into view, quiet as a tomb. He slowed the wagon. "Stay here." "No." "Cass, I'm not waiting outside again." He didn't fight. Her inside. The door was still ajar from the day before. Flies hovered near the block. The blood hadn't dried completely. The air was thicker now. She stepped to the center of the room and stared at the stain. "Why'd he write it?" she asked. The sheriff pulled the first note from his pocket, placed it on the counter. "I think he wanted someone to know he kept you alive." "But why now?" He looked around. "Because something old woke up." Her voice shook. "And he thought I'd remember it? Maybe he was afraid you already had." She looked down at her hands. He moved toward the back room. "Come see this." She followed. The pantry had been stripped clean. No food, just knives, dozens, all polished, all clean. Cass's breath caught. "He made me sharpen those." He turned. "What else?" "I thought it was for meat." Maybe it was. They stood surrounded by blades. Reflections flickered on the steel. Cass said, "I think I was meant to be a butcher." The sheriff didn't speak. "I think he taught me how to cut things before I learned how to speak." He stepped toward her. "And did you?" She nodded. "Clean, fast, no hesitation." The silence stretched. Then she whispered, "You still think he died for me?" "Yes." "Then why's it feel like he was warning me instead?" He didn't answer. She didn't push. They stood there, ghosts with knives for memories. They left the butcher's shop without a word. Cass rode with her arms wrapped tight around herself, face turned to the wind. The sheriff didn't ask where she was taking them. He watched her hands instead. How they twitched when they passed the old schoolhouse. How they steadied when the trees turned darker, thicker, like memories gave shape to the land. The wagon slowed near a broken fence that barely held together. Beyond it, a church leaned sideways like it had tried to fall but forgot how. The steeple was missing. Just jagged wood now, with birds nesting in the corners. The yard was scattered with cracked stones and overgrown grass. But in the center sat a well, squat and covered in warped planks, surrounded by stone. Cass stepped down first. Her boots crunched against brittle weeds. The sheriff followed. "Where are we?" She walked to the well, placed a hand on the wood. "I used to dream about this," she said. "Didn't know it was real." "You sure it is?" She looked at him. "Yeah." He circled the well, pulled the cover halfway off. Dust and mold rose up from the shaft. Inside, a rope hung limp in the dark, knotted and frayed halfway down. He squinted. Someone was down there. Cass didn't flinch. "Someone still is." He looked at her. "What do you remember?" She kneeled and brushed dust off the stone rim. "I was small. There was a woman, gray shawl, always humming. She said the well didn't take water, only secrets." He crouched. "Does that sound like something a sane woman says?" Cass stared into the hole. "I think she was dead when she said it." He didn't respond, reached for a stone and dropped it. They waited. Nothing. No thud. No splash. Just silence. Cass stood slowly. "Then we dig." He looked up. "We? Do you want answers or not?" He pulled a coil of rope from the back of the wagon, tied it to the base of a nearby post. "You don't have to go down. I'm not letting you find whatever's down there without me." He tested the knot. "Have you ever climbed into a well before?" "I climbed out of one." She gripped the rope and lowered herself in before he could argue. The sheriff muttered, then followed. The inside walls were slick and cold. The light thinned fast. They moved slowly, boots braced on rough stone, rope creaking with each inch. About 20 feet down, the shaft opened wider. A ledge. They stepped onto it. The air was sour, old, like it had never been disturbed. The sheriff lit a match. The flame shook. The walls were marked, carvings, dozens of them, names, dates, symbols cut deep with something sharp. Cass stepped closer. "These are girls' names." "You sure?" "They always start the same." He looked around. "How many?" "Too many." She touched one. Her fingers traced each line like it hurt to follow. The sheriff moved to the edge, shone the match over the next drop. Another rope hung there, tighter, newer. He pulled it up slightly. A sack came with it. Cass's breath caught. He undid the knot, peeled back the cloth. Inside were bones, small, wrapped in a dress. A tiny boot fell out. Cass backed up, hand over her mouth. The sheriff stood. "Someone's been using this recently." Cass whispered, "I thought I was the only one." "You were the last one. Doesn't mean you were the only." She gripped the wall hard. "He brought me here." The sheriff watched her. "The butcher," she nodded, "said we were burying something we didn't need anymore. What was it?" "I thought it was a dog." He didn't speak. Cass turned toward the carved names. "That one," she pointed. "I think she sang the song." He traced the name with his finger. "Celine." Cass's eyes glassed over. "She sang it every night. I could hear her through the floor, even when I was bleeding." "Do you remember her voice?" "I remember it stopping." He closed the sack, tied it back. "We take it up," he said. "No." He looked at her. "We leave her here," Cass said. "If she was buried in silence, she should stay with it." He nodded once. They climbed up, slow. At the top, they pulled the rope free. Cass turned toward the church. "You ever think maybe the land knows?" "What? All of it. What's done? What's hidden?" He looked around. "If it does, it's waiting." "For what?" "For someone like you." They walked back to the wagon. She didn't look back. But he did. One last glance into the well, and this time he thought he saw something shift in the dark. Not movement, just breathe, holding, watching. The next morning came without birds. The air outside the tavern was thick, gray, and unmoving. The sheriff checked the wagon ropes again, but Cass had already climbed in, arms folded, eyes fixed on nothing. They didn't speak until the well was in sight. The church looked smaller in daylight, less haunted, more forgotten, but the well hadn't changed. It sat heavy in the grass, lid back in place like it hadn't been moved in years. Cass stepped down before the wagon stopped. "We didn't check the bottom." The sheriff followed. "The rope wasn't long enough." "Then we get more." He walked to the wagon bed and pulled a fresh coil. She took it before he could test the knots. "I'll lower it," she said. "You sure?" "I'm the one they put down there first." He didn't argue. He tied one end to the frame of the wagon, then helped her loop the other end over the pulley nailed into the old wood. The rope creaked as it slid down. Cass gripped the side. "Something's down there. I feel it." "We take it slow." She nodded. "Stop when it catches." They dropped the bucket. It fell fast, then caught with a soft thud halfway down. Cass leaned in, listened. "Feels wrong." The sheriff grabbed the crank and started reeling it in. The wood groaned. The rope jerked once. Then, snap! Cass stumbled backward. The sheriff cursed and yanked the line back. The end came up frayed. She turned. "We go down." He shook his head. "We don't need to." Cass narrowed her eyes. "I got another way." He left, returned minutes later with a hooked iron pole from the wagon's toolbox. "Use this," he said. "Hook what's down there and haul it." She didn't like it, but helped anyway. The hook scraped stone, caught something. Together they pulled. Metal clanged. A bucket rose slowly, swaying with weight. The smell hit before it cleared the rim. Damp cloth, old rot, copper, and time. Cass stepped back. "What is it?" The sheriff lifted the bucket onto the grass. Inside, bones, small, wrapped in oilcloth tied with twine. She didn't move. "Child." He knelt, untied the knot. The cloth opened with a sound like breath caught in the throat. A locket slid out. Cass picked it up. Inside, a name etched in tiny script. Casseline. She froze. "That's... I know." "You didn't know?" the sheriff asked. She shook her head. "I thought I was named after a drunk's lover." He watched her. "You were named after a secret." Cass traced the name with her thumb. "Why would he give me her name?" "Because he couldn't forget what he did to her." Cass looked at the bones again. "You think this was her?" "I think whoever she was, she didn't come back up." She crouched beside the bucket, wrapped her arms around her knees. "I used to dream that I drowned." "You didn't." "Feels like I did." He didn't touch her, just sat beside her, quiet. The wind shifted. Leaves crackled. Cass looked toward the trees. A figure stood at the edge of the woods, still, long coat brushing his boots, wide-brimmed hat casting his face in shadow. She stood, breath caught. Who was that? The sheriff turned, too slow. The man tipped his hat, then turned and walked into the trees. Cass didn't blink. You saw him? Yea. You know him? Not yet. But he knew me. The sheriff said nothing. She whispered, He was watching me like I was supposed to be buried too. The sheriff picked up the locket, held it between two fingers. That man's the reason your name matters. Cass's eyes filled, but she didn't let the tears fall. What does that mean? It means there's more than one person who remembers you. She dropped to her knees, hands in the dirt. Then why don't I? The sheriff looked at the well. Because you were meant to forget. They buried the bones just off the side of the churchyard, away from the others, beneath a tree that still bore leaves. Cass pressed the locket into the dirt. No marker, she said. If she was meant to disappear, let her rest without names. The sheriff held a stone between his fingers. But someone needs to remember. Cass stood. Then you do it. He dropped the stone. I already am. They walked back to the wagon in silence. Cass climbed up, slow this time, like the air itself had weight. Before the sheriff climbed in, he turned to the trees. The woods were still, but he knew they weren't alone anymore. He climbed in beside her. You want to go back to the tavern? He asked. No. Then where? Where he found me, she said. Where it started. He nodded once. The wagon turned, wheels creaking toward the road. Behind them, the well stood open, breathing secrets back into the wind. The tavern was still dark when they returned. Windows shuttered. No lanterns, no voices. The front door hung open like it had been waiting for them to come back or never return. Cass didn't speak when she stepped inside. The sheriff followed slowly, closing the door behind them. The latch didn't catch right. It never did. Upstairs, her room smelled of stale whiskey and old wood. The bed was still unmade. The chair by the window hadn't moved. It all looked the same, only Cass didn't. She sat at the edge of the bed and began to undo her braid. Her fingers moved slower than usual, like each knot fought back. Hair loosened, fell heavy around her shoulders. Then she turned. Come look. The sheriff stepped close. She tilted her head forward and lifted the back of her hair. Right beneath the hairline, just above the nape of her neck, a scar twisted the skin, circular, faded at the edges, but inside it, a letter, carved deep, burned in. C. He didn't speak at first. Cass kept her eyes down. Well? He crouched. He marked you. She stayed still. He raised me. Are you sure about that? She stood up fast. The chair scraped the floor. Her hand hit the side table. A glass tipped, cracked, shattered on the floor. She didn't move to clean it, just stared down, hands trembling. The sheriff said nothing. She whispered, I thought I got that scar falling on the stove. He told me I tripped. You believe him? I used to. And now, she shook her head, slow. Now I think he wanted to make sure no one else could ever mistake me. For what? For anyone but his. The sheriff stood. It wasn't love. I know. You weren't the first. Her jaw locked. You sure? I've seen that brand before. She looked up. Where? He hesitated. A long time ago. Another town. Another girl. She didn't live long. Cass stepped back. How many of us were there? He shook his head. Too many. Her voice cracked. Why didn't anyone stop him? Because men like him hide behind good meat and clean aprons. Because he smiled. I don't remember smiling. You weren't meant to. She sank back to the bed, elbows on knees, hands over her mouth. Her breath came shallow. He stood by the window, looking out. Dawn hadn't broken yet. Just that dead gray before the light makes up its mind. Cass finally asked, What does it mean? The sheriff turned. It means your name came after the brand. Not before. So I was made. In his image. She looked at the floor. Then I don't know who I am. You will. She didn't answer. He walked to the door, placed a hand on the frame. We ride before the sun hits. Where? He didn't reply. Cass stood and grabbed her coat. I didn't ask where you're taking me. I know. Why not tell me? Because I need you to see it. She picked up the broken glass, dropped it in the basin. Her fingers bled, but she didn't flinch. He watched her. I'm not weak, she said. I never said you were. You're acting like it. I'm acting like someone's about to come looking for that scar. They already have. Not like this. She looked up. Is he dead? Who? The man who watched from the trees? No. Then he's next. The sheriff nodded. They moved downstairs together. The tavern was still empty. No Daryl, no regulars, just dust. Cass walked behind the bar and pulled a bottle from the shelf. She didn't drink from it, just opened it, poured half on the floor. "What are you doing?" "Leaving the ghost something." "Your ghost?" She looked at him. "Hi." The sheriff didn't stop her. They stepped outside. The air was colder now. Wind cuts are sharper. The wagon waited like it hadn't moved since yesterday. Cass climbed in without a word. He followed, took the reins. They left without looking back. The road was narrow, lined with trees that leaned too close. Fog thickened around the wheels. Branches reached like hands. Cass said, "I used to think the scar meant I was chosen." "You were." She looked at him. "For what?" He answered without turning. "To live." They rode in silence after that. He didn't say where they were going, and she didn't ask. The wheels creaked over gravel until there wasn't gravel anymore, just dirt packed hard by forgotten footsteps. The sheriff pulled the reins. The horse slowed. Cass sat still, eyes forward. The house rose in front of them like a carcass. Wood warped, windows busted, roof folding at the corners. Vines had eaten half the porch. The chimney leaned like it had given up. One shutter clapped softly in the wind, slow and steady, like a heartbeat too far gone to save. Cass climbed down before the wagon stopped. Her boots hit the ground with a thud that didn't echo. She walked toward the door. "I've seen this place in my sleep," she said. The sheriff followed but didn't speak. She didn't knock, just pushed the door open with her palm. Inside, dust swirled slowly in the slanting light. Floorboards split at the seams. Wallpaper peeled like old skin. But the hearth, center of the room, stood clean. No cobwebs, no soot on the stone. The ashes inside were still warm. She stepped closer. "Someone's been here." The sheriff crouched by the fireplace, touched the stone. His fingers came back smudged. "Hours ago," he said. Cass moved through the parlor. Her hand grazed the walls like they might remember her. She opened a narrow door beside the chimney, a closet. Inside, hanging crooked on a rusted nail, was a small dress, faded blue, stitched initials on the chest, C.A.S. Her throat tightened. "You said I wasn't the first." "You weren't." She pulled the dress off the nail. Threads gave way, snapping one by one. The fabric dropped in her hands like it didn't want to be touched. The sheriff stepped beside her. "I think you were the last." She turned. "Then where are the rest?" He looked toward the fireplace. "That's what this house is for." Cass stepped back. "You think he brought them here?" "I think someone did." She held the dress close, studied the stitching. "It's the same style I wore when I was 6. "You remember it?" "No," she said. "But my body does." He moved past her, deeper into the house. A hallway stretched from the parlor to the back. Rooms branched off, doorways uneven. One room held a bed frame twisted out of shape. Another had a wooden chair bolted to the floor. Restraints still hung from the arms. The sheriff stared at them. This wasn't a home. Cass stood in the doorway. "No." He turned. "Do you recognize any of it?" She closed her eyes. "I dreamed of a room that didn't end." He stepped into the farthest room. A study, maybe. Shelves bare. A desk overturned. Papers shredded like claws had gone through them. Cass bent down and picked up a photo tucked under the desk. The edges were curled. The image faded. 3 girls, all dark-haired, standing in front of this very house. Only one had a face scratched out. She held it up. "Which one am I?" The sheriff stared at the photo. "I don't know." Cass folded it in half. "Then neither do I." They walked back toward the hearth. She tossed the dress into the ashes. "Why doesn't this place burn?" The sheriff shook his head. "It did, just not the way you think." She stared at the fireplace. "Something happened here, something quiet." He leaned on the wall. "That kind of quiet doesn't go away." Cass sat on the floor. "You believe in curses?" He didn't answer. She asked again. "I believe in memory," he said, "and that's worse." Cass rubbed her wrists. "I remember her now." "Who?" "The one before me." He crouched. "How?" "She used to hum through the walls. Not a song. Just sound." "The girl in the photo?" Cass nodded. "She wasn't allowed to speak. Only hum." He looked around. "Maybe she's still here." "Maybe we all are." He stood. "This place needs to be buried." "Not yet." "Why not?" Cass rose to her feet. "Because it hasn't finished talking." They searched the attic. Just beams and dust. But in the far corner, behind a loose plank, they found a tin box wrapped in oilcloth. Inside, clippings, names of missing girls, dates, one scrap of paper with only a single sentence. She remembers in pieces. Cass stared down. I was supposed to forget. You weren't supposed to survive. She folded the paper, slid it in her coat. Then maybe remembering's the only thing I've got. The sheriff stepped to the window. The sun had started to rise barely, but the sky stayed dull, like it didn't want to watch what came next. He said, "We will ride again." Cass nodded. Where? The place the law forgot. She didn't ask what that meant. She just followed. Outside, the house stood behind them, whole in shape but hollow in soul. It didn't smoke. It didn't burn. But I remembered. The sky was too still. No birds, no breeze. Just a pressure in the air, like the land itself was holding its breath. Cass stood in the parlor, staring at the hearth, then turned sharp toward the floor. "It's here," she said. The sheriff looked up. "What is?" She pointed down. "Something. Underneath." He crossed the room. "You feel it?" "I feel what's missing." He crouched, ran his hand. Along the boards, one plank gave a hollow thud. He tapped again. Cass dropped to her knees beside him. "This one." He pulled out his knife, wedged it between the cracks, and pried. The wood groaned but lifted. Dust spilled into the air. Beneath the board was a tin box, rusted but intact. He hauled it out, wiped it off with his sleeve. The latch popped easy. Inside were letters. Dozens. Folded with care, edges yellowed, tied with twine, all in the same hand. Cass stared, breath caught. She reached in and took the top letter. Her fingers trembled as she unfolded it. The ink had bled, but the words were clear. "I couldn't save them all, but I saved her." She went still, then sat back against the wall, silent. The sheriff didn't speak. He watched her shoulders shake, soft and slow. Cass didn't make a sound. He turned away, stared out the cracked window. Trees stood like stone. A shadow moved near the edge of the clearing. Then light. A match. Flame licked the side of the stable. He stepped back. "Cass." She didn't move. He grabbed her arm. "Cass, they lit the damn barn." She looked at him, eyes glassy. "Run or stay?" He pulled her up. "We need to go." "No," she said. "I want to remember the flames." "Cass." "I never got to choose how it ended. I do now." The fire spread fast. Dry beams snapped. Hay caught like paper. Smoke thickened in the room, seeping in through cracks. He grabbed the box. "We're taking it." "Why?" "Because truth deserves air." They moved through the house, ducked under beams, past smoke-streaked walls. Every breath burned. The sheriff shoved open the back door. The stable roared, fire climbing high. Ash rained from the sky like snow turned angry. Cass stepped outside, barefoot, eyes locked on the blaze. "It's like I can hear them," she said. "The others," she nodded. "They're in the fire." He opened the box again, pulled out another letter, and read it under the glow. "She didn't cry when I took her. None of them ever cried." Cass swallowed. He thought that meant we were ready. He thought it meant you were broken. She stepped closer to the flame. "What kind of man saves you with one hand and brands you with the other?" "A coward." She reached for the box, took out another letter. This one was shorter. "She'll forget me." "That's the only way she'll live." Cass tore it in half. He was wrong. The sheriff grabbed her wrist. "Are you sure you want this? All of it?" She nodded. "If I burn it, fine. But I won't forget." A beam from the stable collapsed. Sparks flew toward the porch. They ducked back. The roof of the barn caved in. The sheriff pulled her toward the trees. "We can't stay." She didn't argue this time. They reached the edge of the clearing, turned back once. The house hadn't caught. Not yet. Not even smoke from the windows. "The house doesn't burn," Cass said. "It never does." "It doesn't need to," he said. "It already killed everything inside." They kept walking. The woods swallowed them. The box was heavy now, not just in weight, but in truth. They found a fallen log, sat down. Cass ran her hand along the tin. "How long do you think he planned it?" "Years. And no one stopped him." No one knew how, or didn't want to. He looked at her. "You still think he raised you?" She shook her head. "He collected me." "Why?" "To finish something." "What?" She held up her hair, exposing the scar. "This. He made things. And you were one of them." She nodded. "Last one, maybe." He opened another letter. read it aloud. They never screamed. I always waited. But they never did. Just silence. And that's what scared me most. Cass stared into the dark. I remember silence, so loud it cracked. He looked at her. Have you ever screamed? No, she said. But I will. She stood, tossed the letters one by one into the dirt. I want the world to know. He watched her. She said, let the house stay. Let it rot. But this, she held up the tin. This we bury. Where? Where they can't dig it up again. She took the sheriff's knife, walked to a spot between two pines, dug with bare hands until the soil gave way, placed the box in the hole, covered it slowly. When she finished, she stood over the fresh dirt. I forgive them, she whispered. He stepped beside her. The others. She shook her head. Myself. The wind moved again, just once. The fire behind them died slow, not with a scream, just a hiss, like breath finally leaving the body. They didn't turn around. They didn't need to. The house that didn't burn had done its job. Now it was her turn. Smoke poured through the cracks in the floorboards before they heard the fire snap. Cass coughed, grabbed the tin box, and shoved it toward the window. The sheriff kicked the back door open. The frame groaned but gave. Heat rushed in behind it. The air outside felt just as heavy. They stumbled into the yard, clothes singed, lungs clawing for breath. The sheriff dropped to one knee in the mud and pulled the box out of Cass's hands. He set it gently in the grass. She dropped beside it, coughing hard. The sheriff reached into his coat, pulled out the badge. Cass looked over. What are you doing? He turned it over once in his fingers, then let it fall. The metal hit the mud with a soft, final thud. I think I've done enough pretending. Cass stared at it, stunned. You're not law? He looked at her. Not anymore. She stood slowly, brushing ash from her coat. Then what the hell are you? He didn't answer right away, just stood and faced her, smoke curling behind him. She stepped forward. You lied. I kept things quiet. Same thing. He met her eyes. I wasn't chasing you. Then why follow me? Because the ones who branded you still breathe. Cass didn't move. He added, and because I used to be like them. That froze her. She whispered, you're saying you... Number, but I turned away. Same as they did. Same as the others. I watched it happen. I filed reports that went nowhere. I buried the names. Cass's voice cracked. So you came here to feel better? No, he said. I came to finish it. She stared at him, hard, then bent down, picked up the badge, held it out. You want this back? He shook his head. That's not mine anymore. She dropped it again, deeper in the mud. The fire behind them cracked louder. Part of the porch collapsed inward. Cass looked over her shoulder. The house should have burned first. It's trying now. Too late. She turned back to the sheriff. So who are they? The ones who still breathe. He didn't flinch. Man in the coat. You saw him. He's not just watching. Cass stepped closer. He's part of it? He started it. She blinked. He raised the butcher? Number. He hired him. For what? To erase. Cass shook her head. Erase what? Girls' names, family lines, property records, bloodlines that didn't fit. Her breath caught. You're saying I was... Born on land they wanted. Her voice was nice. They branded me for dirt. They branded you because you were living proof of what they stole. She looked down. And all the others. Same. She stared at the tin box. He saved me. But only one. Guilt can't save everyone. No, she said. But I can try. The sheriff knelt beside the box again. The letters prove everything. Cass nodded. And now? We take them to the man who started this. Alive? Not if I have anything to say about it. She grinned, faint. Then let's stop them. He looked at her, chest still rising fast. You sure? Cass's voice was flat. I was branded for silence. I'm done being quiet. He stood. Then we ride. Cass reached down, grabbed the tin. He moved toward the wagon, grabbed the reins. They climbed in as the first light touched the horizon. Behind them, the fire found something worth eating. The walls groaned, then split. Smoke rose like a black banner. Cass didn't turn around. The sheriff said, we head west, near the old mill. Why there? That's where they gather. Still think no one knows. Cass gripped the tin to her chest. They're wrong. The wagon bounced over the road. Trees thinned. Shadows pulled back. Cass broke the silence. What was your badge number? He blinked. Why? Because I want to carve it on a bullet. He looked at her, smiled. 742. She nodded. Then? That's the number they'll remember. They didn't speak again. The sun rose slowly behind them, and the man with no badge didn't look back. The old mill sat where the woods broke into rock. Stone path, rotted fence, tall doors chained shut long ago, but left unlocked by arrogance. The wagon rolled to a stop in the shadow of the bluff. Cass jumped down first. Her boots struck dry earth. The sheriff followed, hand on his holster. He's in there. Cass didn't blink. Good. They stepped through the tall grass, past the warped sign that used to say, First Grace Chapel. The wood had splintered. Only Grace remained. Inside, the pews were gone. Dust floated where sermons once did. At the back stood a man in a long coat, hands clasped behind him. He turned slow. His face was thinner than memory, eyes colder. A scar split his brow, clean down the middle, like he'd been cut by lightning and kept it. Cass froze. That him? The sheriff nodded once. Judge Brannon. He used to be a preacher. The man smiled. Still am. Preacher judge. Keeper of order. The robes change. The call doesn't. Cass stepped forward. You know who I am? He tilted his head. I named you. No, she said. You stole me. He gestured around the mill. You were brought here in cloth and salt. Chosen. She was just a child, the sheriff snapped. Brannon didn't look away from Cass. She was chosen. By who? The sheriff said. The judge's eyes glinted. By fire. By name. Cass's fists clenched. I remember the rope. Brannon nodded. And you remember the silence. You were the quietest one. I screamed, she whispered. No, he said. You hummed. The sheriff stepped forward. You branded her. Brannon turned to him. We marked her for survival. Cass spoke again, louder. You marked me to disappear. Disappear into purpose. She reached into her coat, pulled the matchbox. The judge's smile cracked for the first time. I've seen what you left behind, she said. The girls, the well, the house that doesn't burn. That house remembered its place, he said. Cass struck the match. A small flame bloomed, trembling in her grip. My name was Casseline. You took it. I gave you a new one. I'm taking it back. The judge's voice shifted. You light that? You light judgment. Good, she said. Let it judge you. She dropped the match onto the oil-soaked boards. The fire spread fast. It always did. Brannon stepped back. This is holy ground. No, she said. It's a grave. The sheriff moved beside her. God won't stop her. Brannon's mouth twisted. Then who will? The sheriff's voice didn't rise. Neither will I. The flames reached the rafters. Brannon didn't run. Cass watched as the fire climbed his coat, kissed his collar. He didn't scream. The sheriff turned to her. Time to go. She didn't move. He touched her arm. He's already dead. Cass nodded. They stepped back through the doorway, smoke curling around them like old hands. The air outside felt colder, brighter, but still wrong. They didn't speak as they reached the wagon. The mill cracked behind them, then groaned, then collapsed. Cass climbed into the wagon without looking back. Do you think it mattered? The sheriff took the reins. It will. She held up the scorched matchbox, only one left inside. She whispered, I saved it. For what? For whatever's next. They rode until the fire became smoke, and smoke became memory, and memory became silence. Only then did she speak again. I didn't scream because I didn't know how. He looked at her. You know now. Cass nodded. And I'll teach the others. They didn't talk after that. There was no need. The fire had already said enough. The sky cracked open just enough to let in the gray. Not sunrise, just the idea of one. Cass walked alone down the dirt road behind the tavern, past the orchard that hadn't borne fruit in years, past the field where her name had first been whispered. She carried the tin box, scorched around the edges. The letters inside were folded in the same order she found them, not because she wanted to keep them neat, because she wanted him to know she read every word. The grave sat behind the butcher's shop, half sunken. A crude stone marked the spot. No name, just a slice across the center, like someone had meant to write more, and stopped. She knelt slowly, set the box down in the grass. "You saved me," she said, voice steady, "even when you shouldn't have." The wind pulled through the trees behind her. "You raised me wrong, but you kept me alive. I don't know how to forgive that, but I'm trying." She opened the box, pulled out one letter, the last one. She read it out loud. "I marked her to keep her. I let her go to save her. Let no man say I wasn't both sinner and shield." Cass laid the letter on the grave. Behind her, footsteps. She didn't turn. The sheriff stood still. No badge, just dust on his coat and smoke still clinging to his hair. "You gonna ask me to come back?" she said. "No," he said. "I'm gonna follow wherever you go." She smiled once, faint. "Then follow me into the life they tried to steal." She stood. He didn't move. Cass walked past the grave, slow, then faster. He followed. They didn't take the wagon, didn't speak, just walked. Through the trees, past the fire line, into land that hadn't known names in a long time. Cass stopped at a clearing. No buildings, just stone and sky. "This is where I want to start," she said. The sheriff looked around. "There's nothing here." "That's the point." She sat on a rock. He stayed standing. "Have you ever thought about who you were before all this?" she asked. He nodded. "A man with a badge and a broken compass. Now." "Still broken," he said, "but I'm walking in the right direction." Cass pulled something from her coat. The burned matchbox. One match left. She struck it, held the flame in front of her face. "You know what this is?" she asked. "A warning." "No," she said. "A memory." She let it burn to her fingertips before dropping it. "I used to think fire took everything," she said. "Turns out it gives you one last chance." He sat beside her. "You know what you want now?" She nodded. "I want to be the last." "Of what?" "The girls they tried to erase." He looked down. "That's not something you can guarantee." "It is if I speak louder than the silence." They sat in the quiet. Cass pulled the last letter from her pocket. Not one she'd found, one she'd written. She placed it under a stone. "For whoever finds this," she said. "For whoever forgets." They rose together. He looked at her. "You gonna tell me your real name now?" he asked. "I don't have one," she said. "Not until I make it mine." "And what'll it be?" She smiled again. "I'll let you know when it fits." They walked out of the clearing, step by step. The trees thinned. The road didn't wait. Behind them, the box stayed buried, and the fire they'd lit in the world didn't need tending. Cass's boots hit the dirt in rhythm. Not away, but forward.